My dear respected brothers and sisters, welcome to another episode of the Arc of Thoughts podcast. Today's topic is about food. We've left the studio today because it's too hot and we can't be inside of there. But I think we've got an adequate replacement. We're outside today. The sun's out. It's too hot. Kasim's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But we have a glass of water. We might have a cat that's going to be roaming about and might join us at some point as well. But anyway, completely unrelated, but today's topic that we're planning on talking about is food. There's a famous saying, and most of us all know it, you are what you eat. And based on that, this is a conversation, and this is the topic that we have today. Consumption of food within the Muslim community is strange, to say the least. I think what we have to understand is, especially in the UK, which is where we are based, the UK population of Muslims is approximately 3 to 5%. I think that's according to the last census, which was in 2011. Although we're in 2021 and this is a census year, the data has not been produced as yet. But we can still estimate that it's approximately 3 to 5%. On the other hand, although we are only a small portion, we make up about 20% of the fresh local meat produce. That's what we consume. If we compare ourselves as a Muslim towards our non-Muslim counterparts in this country, we eat approximately 8 times more fresh meat produce, which quite frankly is a bit ridiculous and is a crazy statistic to be talking about. So what we want to talk about is our consumption of food, where it's coming from, what are we eating, what are the impacts on our lifestyles, is there something that we need to change, and if we do need to make certain changes, how do we go about doing that? So before we get started, please do like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel to follow our journey, and share the content with your friends and your family. So Kasim, let's get started. Let's talk about what are we consuming. I mean, I think the topic naturally is going to veer towards chicken and meat. But before we get into like just the chicken and meat side, I think we also do need to talk about the balance between plant-based diet and meat inside of our diet as well, and talking about balanced meals. I think this is something that sometimes we forego, and I think there are cultural reasons behind that as well. But what are your thoughts initially?
My initial thoughts, looking at the Muslim population in this country, looking at the Muslim youth, and looking at the generation a bit older than us, I'm going to have to say, sorry guys, but our diets are very unhealthy. Our relationship with food is not proportionate in the manner it should be, and we are a lot to blame for the problems that we have. Now, it's important for us to understand that, alhamdulillah, in the UK, let's be honest, compared to all the other European countries outside of the Muslim lands, we have the best food for Muslims inside the UK. Better than America, better than Europe, better than any other place. And maybe this is like sort of a downfall for us, is that we have access to maybe too many things. And because we have this sort of luxury, a luxury now has become something which is a normal part of our daily life. And that's where we see the problems coming into our life. In terms of the access to meat is ridiculously easy for Muslims in the UK, in certain areas. Like some of us have to walk maybe a minute to go get halal meat. Then the availability of chicken, again, so easy. And then alhamdulillah, even Muslims living in the Muslim communities, living in their Muslim areas, they have their own, sort of halal shops, supermarkets, cash and carries. So for us, alhamdulillah, it's very, very easy. Mm-hmm. But for that as well, that brings a lot of problems for us, in where we have to make conscious choices on those things which are going to benefit our life. And today, unfortunately, I see a lot of Muslims not making conscious choices, just making those choices which are easy, but in the long run causing them a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what we're trying to say here is balance is important. The key word here that we're trying to advocate for is balance. And we know, I think generally the understanding is, as Muslims, we don't advocate for a vegetarian lifestyle. We don't say, okay, we are against the consumption of meat. That's not the perspective of the Sharia of the world and the ecosystem of the world. But there is balance you know, especially if you look at the lives of the Prophet ﷺ, if you look at the lives of the Sahaba, if you look at the lives of the pious predecessors before us, you don't see heavy consumptions of meat. Okay, and I know we're talking top of the top, the cream of the cream, those who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But consumption of meat has changed drastically in the last 100 years. And like you mentioned, the main thing that it comes down to is the availability of it. But I think, as I was just alluding to previously, there is a cultural reason that personally I think is important to play, important at play, especially for myself and yourself, where we have continental origin, and many of our parents come from a very poor background. Unfortunately, meat, as it always has been, was a sign of wealth.
Yeah.
You know, to have meat on your table, whether it be chicken, whether it be poultry, whether it be meat, whether it be fish, it's a sign of wealth. And I think over years, what's happened is this thing has become ingrained that we must have it on our table, to an extent where our children are now being raised, where they won't eat the food that's on the table if it doesn't contain one of these three.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, it's tasty. Right? We enjoy our meat as much as the other person does, but it becomes problematic when it's the only thing that we're eating.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's before getting into the whole aspect and the other side of the meat industry that we don't see. We're seeing it from the consumer-based perspective. We just see that meat from the butcher coming straight to our houses. We're not seeing what's actually happening behind the scenes, which is a bit unfortunate. Okay, so Kasim, where do you think our food's coming from then?
Honestly,
Whether it be meat, chicken, plants.
I wanted to say the sky and the earth, but we leave that. No, alhamdulillah, let's be honest. We mentioned before, in the UK, in the West, from all the Western countries, we have the most easy and accessible way in terms of eating meat and chicken.
Mhm.
But now let's backtrack this a bit. Where is our meat actually coming from? So we have a lot of, how should we say, halal accreditation companies which are making the pathway for Muslims to eat halal much easier. You know, and we have to make a lot of shukr for these companies that they're there, because if they weren't there, then a lot of the meat that we will eat or we're going to eat would have been very dubious, would have been very doubtful as well. Alhamdulillah, so these companies are doing a very big service to the ummah, which we have to accredit and acknowledge. But then it comes back to, like, first of all, where is the meat coming from? And then we don't want to get into ethical reasons, but how is the meat being raised? What's it being fed? How is it being treated? What's the age of the meat or the animal before it's being killed? These things all have to come into play. But the fact that we live in such a consumerist society, that these things don't even pass our mind. All we see is the meat on the plate. I was having this conversation with a person at work, and he said something very interesting. He said, when they have to slaughter animals themselves, they don't feel like eating that meat. Why? Because they know the process of slaughter. They know what the animal goes through, and they're there at that time, you know, when the animal's alive and then it's dead. You know, all the blood comes out and it gets cleaned and all the skin is taken away, so on. But for us, because we've become so immune to that, we've become so desensitized to that, all we see is chicken. Many people have not even touched raw chicken, and the first time when they do touch it, the first thing they say is, ew, this is disgusting. That's just the raw chicken. You didn't see it getting killed. You didn't see it getting fed. You didn't see it getting stripped. You didn't see it getting, you know, ripped apart. You didn't see all these processes. So if that just makes you feel like a bit eerie about just touching raw chicken, imagine the process that it went through. The fact that we've become so desensitized to that has a big role to play in our relationship with meat. Is the fact that we don't know where it's come from, and that's another problem in that, because if you don't know where it's come from, we don't know what's happened to it, and that again, it should affect our consumption, but it doesn't, because all of that has been cut out.
Yeah, I think the whole argument is going back to supply and demand, isn't it? Okay, that given that we've talked about the demand is so high, 8 times more than our non-Muslim counterparts, just for meat, then the supply has to match that. And I think what we all have to understand is, when we push the ability to supply and stretch it to the limits that it is at, not just in the meat industry, with anything, then naturally the process starts to become more and more dubious. There start to be more and more corners that are cut, and because the supply needs to match that, like these companies, they aren't worried about ethics for us. When I'm talking about these companies, I'm talking about going all the way back to when the animals are reared, all the way up to the point where the meat is being supplied to our tables. Okay, that entire process, whichever person or people or organizations are involved in between, and I'm not trying to have a dig at anybody here. If anybody thinks I'm throwing in directs, I'm not throwing in directs. This is just the way of life. This is what's normal. That when supply is stretched, then things become problematic. People want to cut corners. It's a natural way of things happening, and this is exactly what's happening in the meat industry right now.
Let's not be about the bush. Like a lot of profit is being made.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, a lot of money is being made in the meat industry.
And Kasim, we have no problem against somebody making money. Business is business at the end of the day, and we promote good business. Somebody making money, for me, that's not a problem.
No.
If somebody is providing a service, the guy can have the biggest beard in the world. He can be the biggest imam in the world, right? But if he's providing a service and I want to pay for that, and I think it's worthwhile paying for that, I don't mind him making his money. That's not problematic. What's problematic is when corners are being cut.
Yeah.
And I think this is what I want to talk about in this conversation, Kasim, is how these animals are being reared. What's the process in these animals? If you're talking about chickens, then are these chickens, are they free range? Are they able to roam about and do as they please, or are they raised in battery farms where they don't have any space to move around? Not only are they not do they not have space to move around, the food that they are being given to consume in a lot of cases is not their natural food.
No.
The food that a chicken naturally eats is not their natural food, because and I don't mean to be crude here, but this is a conversation that needs to be had, and this needs to be mentioned, that they have tubes down their mouths being force fed food to get them bigger and to a size in which the person can profit from them as quickly as possible. The age at which these animals are slaughtered, in weeks, maybe just about in the months. The process is just ongoing, one after the other, and that's not talking about like the sort of injections and the medication that they are given to grow in size, to put on fat or muscle or whatever else it might be, to get them to, because at the end of the day, they're sold by weight. They're not sold by quality.
No.
And let's be honest, Kasim, I'm not in the slightest, do I have a slightest bit of doubt that there are chicken that will come into the houses of Muslim families which are unfit to eat.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Unfit to eat. Okay. And I can guarantee that that's happening.
I've got a question.
Oh.
Have you ever seen a chicken or any sort of animal being forced fed yourself with your own eyes?
No.
I have.
Okay.
I remember, I'm going to mention his name now because he was there with me. We were in Egypt. I went to go buy some chicken from the shop. My friend Darren from North London, Riva brother from Vietnam, mashallah.
Okay.
So he said, we used to decide, let's cook together. So we said, Dad, we're going to eat chicken. So we went to the shop, went to the butcher's. Wallahi, I'm not lying. Wallahi, I'm not. I still remember this like it was if it was yesterday. Went there and you get live chicken, so you can say to him, okay, when this chicken is slaughtered in front of me, so you can see that it's been done in a halal manner. Okay, then you have frozen chickens. Okay, so we've seen the chickens are they're in their cages. This one guy, the guy who owned the shop actually, he picked up the chicken. Wallahi, I'm not lying. He got some seeds, or he got some seeds on there, sesame seeds, whatever. Put them into his own mouth, and then blew them right into the chicken. Honestly, I looked at my friend down like this, and we just walked out of the shop. When you see it for your own eyes, then you realize that what the hell's going on.
I think this is the thing. Like, I mean, you're talking about Egypt, Kasim, where
No, I'm saying that was done openly.
Yeah.
Because the guy wants a better profit. What's happening in more advanced countries, where they have better equipment, where they don't need seeds, where they don't need a person to imagine what else they're putting into the food. That's the point I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, I think this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, all of these things are we sheltered from it, and maybe it's a good thing that we sheltered
Sometimes
from
it
it
is.
because. But yeah, I think this is all getting into the debacle and the argument of organic versus mass produced, and I think the problem is, us sitting here, we don't have the solution for it
No.
because we can never. It can never be that the demand that we currently have for meat, that demand cannot be met ethically. It's not possible. It's not going to happen. So the way that I see it is the only solution for that is the demand needs to be changed. We need to change our lifestyles. We need to adjust the way that we eat to become more sustainable, to eat things which are more wholesome and better for us. And I think this is, like I said, I mean, this is getting into the argument of like eating more organic meat, and I understand that it's more pricey. Okay, it is going to hit the pockets more naturally, but surely it's in the long term is better for us to become more healthy individuals. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. You got a bit of a tricky situation there. Is it easier to change somebody's ethics, or the way they view stuff and their sort of mindset, or is it easier to change an industry?
Yeah.
And we're gonna come back to this, but you mentioned at the start you are what you eat. In the later section, I'm gonna come back to this point, inshallah.
Okay.
Just to hopefully really drive the point home.
Yeah. I think the final thing to mention here is like we're talking about organic and we're talking about free range and we're talking about mass produced. These labels are thrown around, but realistically speaking, in the West, like how can we actually verify that whatever we are getting is organic, is free range? And I think these are words that have like legal definitions behind them. I don't know how where you are, but like if you go to the supermarket and you buy organic eggs, if you look into what the terminology of organic is, it's very different to what you would expect it to be. Okay, but the thing is, it's the lesser of evils, in my opinion. Anybody that goes to a supermarket and is buying these battery hen eggs,
really caged eggs, as you see them.
Yeah, really, you need to take a long hard look at yourself. And I'm not trying to sit on a high pedestal here, okay, but small differences, in my opinion, they do make a difference.
It's making them conscious choices, even though they might be small.
Yeah,
we're making them ethical choices in your ability, whatever you can do, whatever's in front of you.
Yeah.
That would make some sort of change.
Yeah, and I think the whole point of bringing conversations like this is, Kasim, we can't be experts in every field. We have our own field, but if somebody goes into this particular field and makes some changes, kind of action changes, then fantastic.
Yeah.
This is the way that we need to go. Anyway, let's move on to the next section. What is our relationship with food? So, Kasim, Muslims, we as Muslims are facing many problems, many health problems in our societies. But before we get into the health problems, I want to make a quick point about. So we're facing health problems in our society. It is down to food. Food is a factor. Sorry,
I'm glad you said that.
Okay. We can't turn around and say it's the only reason and it's the only thing which is causing problem. There are many things which are causing us to have health problems, but food is definitely a factor. And one of the things that we become reliant upon and our whole lives have become centered around is fast food. Okay, and the fast food industry. So we've talked about the meat industry and the production of meat, but at the same time, the fast food industry is growing rapidly within our own areas because many people are losing the ability to cook for themselves, or basically are lazy about cooking for themselves. Okay, or
they just really enjoy eating food which is processed.
Okay, so that's another point as well. And we're not saying that there's no harm in eating out occasionally, but the thing is, I've heard people who have 3 to 4 days a week worth of takeaway and fast food. And when you're at that point where all you're consuming is fast food, then it's going to have problems. And one of the problems I wanted to get to, which is a slight side point, is all this food, it's got to be packaged in some way, doesn't it? Okay, and that packaging needs to be of a particular standard, or needs to be a particular way. Now the problem is, what happens to all this packaging once we finish eating? Okay, and it's a bit.
That's a separate conversation which we will get into in another podcast.
No. I just want to touch upon this because littering is a deep problem within our own community. Like the fact that you don't have is reverence the right word? Respect, reverence for the areas that you live in, the areas that you've grown up in, the areas that your family are in, your friends are in.
It's your community.
Yeah, your own community. If you don't have reverence for that and you're happy just to throw around empty containers that are dirty, okay, throw around drink cans, bro. When you see on the motorway and you're driving and somebody opens their window out and chucks a container of food out, is disgusting, right? And the fact that you don't have reverence for nature and want to look after and want to throw away your own rubbish, there's no shame in holding onto your own rubbish until you find the bin and throw it away, And I want to make a very quick point here that in our community where we live at the moment, there are some brothers and sisters who have started community cleanup projects, and honestly, like it's heartwarming to see. Unfortunately, I've not had as much time on my hands recently, but honestly, when I see it, it's a fantastic initiative, and to an extent where sometimes it's easy doing it when a few of your mates are together and you all get together. But I remember, I think it was last week or the week before, we play football on a Saturday morning, and one of the days we went early for the game, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, and there's a brother there by himself, cleaning litter from a public space, someone that we know. I don't want to mention his name, but honestly, like when you see that, you got mad respect for this person, man. That he's spending his Saturday mornings, he could be at home chilling with a cup of tea, right, watching Netflix, just relaxing, but no, he's out there taking his own initiative by himself, cleaning the community. Honestly, it had a big impact on me, but this is a separate problem, you see.
That's we're going to make a different podcast just about that, inshallah.
Okay, so let's get back to the problems that we have, that we're talking about. Food, fast food, and health.
Okay. I'm going to tackle this from a different perspective.
Go on.
Our relationship with food, honestly, from what I see, is very problematic.
Okay.
Wallahi, this is just like a mindset that certain people have and other people don't have, and it shows you the direction of life as well. Productive people in their life, people who are doing things, they don't see food as a luxury. Sorry, they see food as a fuel and necessity. So people,
you eat to live, not live to eat.
Yeah, you eat to live. That you eat, you're not really, sorry, how do I phrase this in the correct manner? You're not really to consider, like, you're not fussy and picky for whatever you eat. Like, you can eat the same meal 2 days in a row, 3 days in a row, 4 days in a row. The reason why it doesn't bother you is because it's not a huge priority in your life. You have other priorities which have preference in your life, and food is just like a small decision. It doesn't really bother me. For example, just say I have to eat Weetabix every single day. I'll eat Weetabix, like, it doesn't bother. I'm saying this is just an example for some people. Some people are like, okay, I have to eat vegetables for the next 4 days. I don't care, I'll just eat it. Why? Because it's quick, it's easy, going to save me time, and that gives me more time to concentrate on other things. The relationship that we have, that I see with Muslims, is that now Muslims spend like 2-3 hours a day eating, whether that's prepping food, whether that's sitting down and eating food, whether that's cleaning up food, and I see that as a big problem. How can a person spend 2-3 hours of his time every single day just focusing on what he's going to eat? To me, it shows that people don't have other things going on in their life. Imagine the things you can do in 2-3 hours. Let's be honest, you can achieve crazy things. That you can do an amazing workout. You can keep fit. You can read, like, just say 20-30 pages of a book, for example. You could take a course online, for example. But if you're spending that time just wasting to eat, or you're looking forward to what you're going to eat, you're spending so much preparation on just eating. To see, I see that that's a evil relationship with food, which needs to change, which comes from a deeper problem.
Yeah. So I think like it's sort of a chain between. You're mentioning about 2-3 hours spent on food. Problem is, Kasim, is a lot of guys that we know, and this is a male thing where they don't know how to cook. So the problem is they've got this relationship with food, and they can't cook themselves, so they're resorting to either takeaway, or what's worse is they have this sort of understanding that women are their servants, and whether that be their wives, whether that be their sisters, whether that be their mothers, they just see it as this person's a cook for me.
Yeah.
And this is very, very problematic, you see, because firstly, it may be that our mothers might have done this, okay? It may be that our mothers have brought us up in this manner, but you see, this is not what Islam says. Islam doesn't say that your wife needs to be somebody that spends all day in the kitchen providing 3 square meals for you. And the problem is that if you've been raised like that and you don't have an understanding of food in this manner, we're not saying you can't eat good food, but where you have a mentality of my wife or my mom or my sister has to spend her day making 3 square meals, fresh, each meal something different, or even 2 square meals. I know people that ask for a hot breakfast every morning.
Oh.
Right? Yeah. Like even on work days, they want like a hot breakfast. They want like a cooked breakfast, right?
What you mean, like the full shebang?
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying 3 square meals, Kasim.
No.
Right? But even if you're asking for 2 square meals a day, it's a problem. It's very problematic.
Okay.
Like
when you say 2 square meals, do you mean 2 different meals or the same meal?
Well, you see, every family dynamic is different, and we can't comment on the dynamics of a family, okay? But what I'm trying to say here is that when you have a particular mindset and your understanding is, I need this. No, you don't need 2 square meals a day. You don't need 3 square meals a day. That's not what you need. But the problem is when you demand that, especially for a lot of youngsters in our community that are getting married, they're facing a stark reality of they're not going to get that.
I was gonna say, yeah.
And that's no, that's no dig at our sisters, because that's not what they're there to provide. They're not there to cook and clean for us, okay? And it results in tensions in the marriage,
I can imagine.
But here, let's move on to that.
Sorry, that was a relationship with food. Now I want to talk about takeaways.
Okay.
Now I want to talk about fast food.
Yeah.
Okay, let's be honest. In the Muslim areas in the UK, they are saturated with takeaways and restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing the tweet. One guy goes, because Muslims are too scared to invest it to do a thing. The only thing they put their money into takeaways or restaurants. That's the only thing. So sorry, that's just a joke. But no, like we have crazy amount of takeaways in our areas. And you see that our youth are literally every single week, like these takeaways are packed. Now, don't get me wrong, takeaways are there for a certain reason. For a quick meal when you don't have time to cook at home, they are not the go-to every single day. As you mentioned, that it's problematic when people are eating takeaway 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week. And now let's bring it back. Like, what if somebody's mother, what if somebody's sister or wife has cooked something at home, and because the person has not liked it, he's just gone to the takeaway. Imagine how that makes her feel, for example. Yeah?
Definitely.
But then, what I'm seeing is that I see crazy amount of youth wasting their money on takeaways. The average takeaway now, just say it costs about £10-15. If I'm not wrong, you can do a decent amount of a weekly shop for £10-15. And people are wasting that on one meal.
Yeah. I think, it goes back to this thing of respect as well, respect and reverence. Whenever I've cooked, the first thing that I look for the people that I've cooked for, whether it be like, between us lads, or whether it be at family, the first thing that you look for is you're looking from the corner of your eye to see, are the people enjoying it?
Yeah.
The people, whoever I've cooked for, are they enjoying that food? And it's a big slap in the face when you see somebody not eat the food that you've cooked, you know. I just want to highlight that point, that this is our understanding, is that if somebody has cooked for you, gone through the tribulations and the hardship of cooking for you, because it's not an easy task,
It's not.
okay, then at least have the respect and reverence for that person to partake in that meal and to try and eat from it. You know, there's one thing where it's not edible, and there's another thing where it might not taste as good as you would like it to, and there's a difference between the two. As long as the food is edible, then try to partake of it to the best of your ability, and not be a person that's, you know, whinging and moaning, you know, because it can be really hurtful.
Oh, definitely. Especially for those who are married and people do cook for them. It does become a problem, you know.
Yeah, but I think the final thing to mention about the fast food industry is going back to the meat that they're getting as well. It's unfortunate, but you got to bear in mind that these takeaways and these restaurants, they're out there to make a quick buck. They're out there to make money. And like we said, we have no problem with people trying to earn money, but profit is the income that you have minus the expenditure, and one of the ways that you increase your profit is by reducing your expenditure. And unfortunately, less good quality meat costs more money. So for the business to increase in their profitability, one of the ways is to obtain meat of a lesser quality, which is what happens. You know, it is what it is. That's the way that it happens.
Now, this point I want to get to. You are what you eat, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I see a crazy amount of youth eating takeaway food, eating fast food, and as you just mentioned now, because the quality of food is not very good, it's having a direct impact upon them, on their bodies. You can, you know, when you see a person, this is not normal. You know, I seen so many people went to university, and you know, many guys go to university, they don't know how to cook. Either they get food from home, mom's cooked and put in the freezer, or it's takeaways. Yeah. You know, when I see people went to university and they said, yeah man, I just put on 20 kilo this year, that's not normal. You shouldn't be putting on 20 kilo in a year. You know, a person, don't get me wrong, he gets older, he puts on natural size, you know. But when you're putting on like 10, 15, 20 kilo, and you were like a normal guy, and then you suddenly have problems breathing, that's something like deeply wrong, you know. And it comes to this thing, you are what you eat. If you eat those things which are rubbish, no surprise, you're going to be filled with rubbish. You are going to be rubbish. And if you eat those things which are good or clean, you are going to feel like that, you are going to be that, you are going to look like that. You don't look a certain way by accident, you know. And this is the thing, like so many Muslim youth are just consuming fast food, and they may think, oh no, now we're not putting on weight. You don't understand what it's doing to your arteries, you don't understand what it's doing to your blood, you don't understand what it's doing to your blood pressure, you don't understand what it's doing to these things until you reach the age of 30, 40, and then you get all these problems. You know. And now that's what I want to move on to, in terms of the health problem that we have in our Muslim communities, which are directly to do with our food and the choices that we make in terms of eating food.
Yeah, I think you make a good point here, because there are some people who naturally put on size very quickly after they start consuming food. I'm one of them, right? As soon as I start eating, I'll know within a couple of months that I've been eating a decent amount. But on the other hand, my brother is very different, right? If he can eat a large quantity of food, and on him it's not going to show as quickly.
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, yeah, but I think this is a thing that for those people that are in that situation where you can eat a large amount, and you know, you don't put it on straight away, you have to understand that is, like you mentioned, that's still having an impact on your body. Your organs will start to have more and more fat build up around them. Your veins and your arteries will start to have cholesterol line inside of them, and you know, this is a process which takes time. It's not like you're not going to see the effect of your bad eating habits over the course of a year or 2 years, but trust me, by the time you get to 35, 40, 45, 50, you will feel the effects of that. It's all about building balance and control, which are like the buzzwords for today's podcast. But what do we need to do to change our habits then, Kasim? I mean, there's the obvious of like eat more fruit and veg, right?
Yeah, no. Let's be honest. Okay, we come from this perspective. We come from subcontinent. Okay, so our parents came from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh. Okay, but the problem is that when our parents came here, is that the sort of knowledge that they had in terms of food and diet and lifestyle was transported with them over here because that's the only thing that they knew. You know, and let's not be honest, our food is tasty, mashallah, compared to all the other cuisines. You know, let's be honest, the Asian sort of cuisine is the best. But the problem is we don't live that lifestyle that they did in India, for example, in Pakistan, Bangladesh. So, for example, when you do go back home, you see farmers or people in the morning, they have tea and they'll have a paratha with them, you know, and they'll have a good breakfast. But the guy's gonna go work in the field all day long in this heat. Us guys are tired just from sitting in this heat. The guy needs the energy because he's gonna burn it off. He's gonna use it. But the problem with us is that we're in England now, so on a just say Monday morning it's 8:30, we're having our tea with like 3-4 spoons of sugar inside, and then we're having, you know, some sweet, and we're having whatever we're having, you know, maybe some eggs and whatever. But then we're going to our desk job and just sitting down, you know. And then at lunchtime, you know, we're having like our roti and our chicken tikka, and then we're sitting at the desk. You know, then we're coming home, we've driven home, we're not even biked home, we're not even ran home, we're not even walked home, we've driven home, and we're coming home to another 5-star meal, and then after that, most of us are like just sitting down, we may go to the masjid, may come back, and then we're going to sleep. That's going to have a huge impact on our life, you know, and the fact that we don't live such active lifestyles, we need to change our food, we need to change in how much we consume, you know, the quantities of what we consume, and also what we consume. Like, let's be honest, some of our food has too much oil inside, some of our food has too much, let's say, just say chilies and masala, which are not good for the insides, you know, and these are tweaks that we need to make, which will see a huge benefit in the long run.
I think at the end of the day, what we're saying is every person needs to evaluate their own eating habits, because and make change accordingly. Because the thing is, I don't know the eating habits of all the people that are watching this video, and I'm not saying that my lifestyle and my eating habits are an ideal that you should all follow, but at the end of the day, it comes down to a person doing some sort of thinking about what they're eating, you know, and making certain changes. Like you mentioned about the oil, for example, you might want to consider trying a different type of oil, or investing a bit more in the oil that you buy, which is of a better quality, because generally you'll tend to find supermarket oil is a refined oil in which they've extracted all the goodness from it, which leaves a raw substance behind, which you might want to look into the different types of oil that are available. Maybe try olive oil or rapeseed oil or whatever other oils. I mean, I'm not a dietitian that can inform you about that, but it's something you may want to look into. The use of vegetables. You see, we've talked about meat being inside of our diet, and yes, we do need to take on a more vegetable-based food. But to begin with, if you just want to incorporate some vegetables inside of your food with the meat when you cook it, this is an example that you can use. Noor over here, he's a pure fish diet, but he's an exception. But these are some changes that we can make. The avoidance of, or the reduction of, confectionery, sweets and chocolates. I've got a huge sweet tooth, man, but I know that it has an impact on me. So the reduction of sweets and confectionery, chocolates, crisps, I think what would be a really, really good way for us to change our lifestyle, aside from actually changing our main foods, is to actually change our snacking habits. You know, what we snack on majority of the time tends to be quite unhealthy, and yes, this is a wider problem than just us, because at the end of the day, where sweets and chocolates, when you're provided with a choice between sweets and chocolates in the supermarket compared to more healthy options, the difference in the price between the two is stark, right? And the question is, do we require the state to intervene in this and provide more of a financial incentive for us to eat more healthily? Okay, because we're in the unfortunate position in the UK where the only thing that grows in this country is potatoes, right? And there's only so many potatoes that you can have. Okay, majority of all of our other fruit and veg is imported from other countries, and this naturally brings a price tag along with it. So what do you think? Should the state intervene?
But that's the thing now, like, unfortunately, science is not there for human benefit now, it's there for corporate interest. So the reason why all these things are cheaper, or the reason why the snacks and the crisps and the chocolate are cheaper, is for the interest of businesses, not for our interest anymore. So it's up for us to educate ourselves
Mm.
and make these conscious decisions ourselves.
Mhm.
You know, and even if you don't buy, just say some fruit or some vegetables because it's more expensive, just don't buy the confectionery.
Mm.
You don't need to buy everything. Your cupboards don't need to be filled with this stuff. It's nice to have it once in a while as a treat, but don't make it something which is just normal in your house. That
Yeah.
when somebody's hungry, go get some crisps, go get some chocolate. No. You know, just provide alternatives. You know, if you can't buy the more expensive stuff, just don't buy the I call it rubbish. Honestly, this is all the stuff which makes people put on weight.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to mention this part is that I think that healthy lifestyle, being strong, being fit, yeah, is something that needs to be talked about in our Muslim communities. I don't feel like it's talked about enough in the mosques, and I don't feel like Muslims, and especially imams, don't give this importance. You know, and I see this like as a huge problem. Like, if you have Muslims who can't run, they can't play football, they can't do physical activity. You know, this was like a huge part of the life of the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Sahaba. They were very fit, strong people. You know.
We're not advocating for only playing football.
No,
That's what we enjoy.
No.
But
Any sport which keeps you fit, which keeps your mind strong, keeps your body strong, is something we're advocating for. And I think that Muslims, or especially in the subcontinent, we don't push this because we're very comfortable just eating our food and just, you know. I don't want to say more, but I'll let you carry on.
yeah, I see what you're saying. We definitely need to become more fitter and stronger, and to maintain a healthy lifestyle. And I agree with you that it needs to be mentioned more.
Because Islam is not something we just to do with our spiritual side, so with our emotional side, and to do with, you know, our mental side, and to do with our physical side. It's not just about the masjid and the salah. Islam is, you know, something which is far greater than that.
I think what it is, we need to bring our children up in that way as well, don't we? Where they actually enjoy physical activities. I think there's been a recent shift within the last 5 to 10 years of a lot of the youth being brought up on video games. And the problem is that once you get stuck behind a screen, then it becomes very difficult for that child to then develop the love to keep physically fit, you know. And this is a big point that we need to address. Okay, and like there's always nuance in these kind of arguments and situations. There are people that live in areas which unfortunately are not safe for their children to be outside, and therefore the children don't go outside. But there are plenty to talk about. I think what we want to get, what the plan of this podcast and what the plan of this particular episode was, for us to highlight our eating habits, for us to take some thought and pay some attention to the kind of things that we are consuming, both from the understanding of what we're buying off the shelves of a supermarket or from our local shops, as well as have an understanding of where that food is actually originating from and where it's coming from, for them to be on our shelves, and finally for us to actually become more physically fit and stronger individuals. And all of this will have an impact on our emotional side as well. You see, what we eat has an impact physically, it has an impact spiritually, it also has an impact emotionally as well. We'll find certain foods help us to perk up and be more active. Other foods will make us more lethargic and more lazy. So I think this is where the conversation is led to. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Kasim?
No, I think you summarised that very well.
Okay.
Just making these things aware, as we said, the whole point of the podcast was just to get things out there, make people think, and just allow people to maybe digest what we've said. Maybe some people might not agree with what we're saying, but that's fine. Everybody has their opinion, you know.
Okay, so let's draw it to a close for today. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode. Please do like the video below, subscribe to follow our journey, and please do share with your friends and family. The next episode, Kasim, what's the next episode going to be about, inshallah?
We discuss climate change and the environment.
Yeah, inshallah. Next episode will be on climate change and the environment. So I think we're going across this line of sustainability, and these are topics that maybe some people might not be interested in listening to be honest. Like this food episode, I don't see as many people viewing it as maybe some of the other topics, and the same thing with the climate change and the environment. But I think I'm planning to bring a lot to the table for the next episode. There's a lot of research I'm planning on doing into the next episode. which again I don't think is discussed within our communities, and we need to be aware of the impact that we have had, particularly in the last 50 years, in the next 50 years, and what may potentially happen, and what changes can we make in our lives, in our lifestyle, to protect the environment. We've recorded this episode outside, and it's a beautiful day, Kasim. We hear like the birds tweeting as well. We've had the cat make a guest appearance as well, and it's been nice outside. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.